my passion for food to my childhood and upbringing. Growing up in a joint family of 15, our meal times were moments that I looked forward to. The entire family came together to not just share food, but stories from each other's day. My grandmother, my mom, and my aunt were the ones who introduced me to some of the most amazing food that I've ever tasted. And living in India, where food is an integral part of every festival or event, my memories about food always included the spaces and the emotions that were involved with it. For instance, Kartike Deepam meant sweet and crispy pori urundais that can be gobbled up without a count. And Diwali meant Mysore Pak in abundance. Nonetheless, making Mysore Pak was a fun ritual that my grandmother and I cherished secretly when my mom and my aunt used to take their afternoon naps. Most of my encounters with food and flavors, my childhood encounters, occurred in my grandmother's kitchen and her garden. And every time I recall those memories of my grandmother's food, I also recall the smell of the damp earth, the feeling of sand and gravel under my feet, the lush green algae in my grandmother's garden well, and the warmth of her lovely hugs. Even today, when I visit my grandmother's place, I crave for the same food that she fed me decades ago in the same kitchen. That's how powerful a role food plays in identifying home and in pushing me to pursue my dreams in food design. Food design works on the paradigm of interaction between humans and food. And the interaction can be of any form, from a cutlery designed to eat food better, or packaging designed to transport it better, to the interiors of a retail space designed to make your shopping experience better. And food design strives to make communication better between humans and food at every step of our interaction. When put to right use, it can be a powerful tool that can bring about significant changes in the society. So, as a fresh graduate of food design, I was all about questioning the food habits and like innovating to create better experiences for the future. With all my ideas and my vision for the future, what I had overlooked was the fact that food is a part of a very complex web, and time does not have a linear progression when it comes to food. Events from our past could still have an impact on our future. So, to think about our future, we need to have a very clear understanding of our past, of our history, and introspect on why we are where we are right now. And my experience with working with the Center for Genomic Gastronomy threw more clarity on this part. The Center for Genomic Gastronomy is a artist-led think tank that examines biotechnologies and the biodiversity of human food systems. I had the opportunity to represent them in one of their projects, the new national dish UAE, in Al Sirkal Avenue, Dubai, in Jan 2020, as a part of the Alcos Fest. The new national dish is a project that asks how climate change can affect what the people of United Arab Emirates might eat in the year 2030. So, in order to make these predictions for the next 10 years, we had to go back about 2 decades and understand the transformation that UAE had gone through socially, culturally, politically, and environmentally, and put all of this together along with the vision that they had for the next decade. The aim, the end aim was to make the visitors understand how what their food habits were in the past and what they were eating today was changing or shaping their future. And the challenge for them was to choose an ideal future based on both taste and the connection that they made with their predicted storylines. Now, let us apply the context of a new national dish for India. what would you pick as the national dish of our country? And what would be the factors that you take into consideration when you make that decision? Would it be based on taste, only on taste, or would it be based on, like, would you pick a dish that speaks about the country, or would it be sustainable? Ideally, it should be all, but it sounds impossible, isn't it? Maybe let's bring down the scale a bit. Let's try picking a representative dish for Tamil Nadu. Shall we go with idli and sambar? Now, I'm not saying idli sambar is the representative dish of Tamil Nadu. Let's go with it for now to understand the concept. Idli sambar is one of the most common breakfast dishes here. It's healthy, it's tasty, it's also quite diverse and sustainable in terms of the ingredients that go into the making of it. So it ticks all the boxes to be our dish, right? But the interesting point, note here, is that idli did not originate here. Neither did sambar. So idli came to us from Indonesia, and sambar came to us from Maharashtra. Of course, they did come to us in their own versions, and we have made them ours. So wherever you are in this world, when you eat idli and sambar, it immediately reminds you of Tamil Nadu or majorly South India. A region's culinary landscape can tell us all about its history, the influences it had, and the changes it went through. It becomes a very significant part of our identity. In our case, Idli Sambar can tell us all about our diversity, the connections that we share. Now, Sambar was invented in the 17th century. What would you have identified Tamil Nadu or South India with before that? That also means that idli and sambar can be replaced by another dish in the future, or who knows, it has already been replaced. So this change is nothing to be apprehensive about. Identity, whether it's local, national, or cultural, is an ever evolving, multi-dimensional entity. So, what is this fear associated with globalization and the stress about preserving heritage all about? What are we so scared about when identity is not constant? To answer this question and to understand how identity is dynamic, I would like to quote a few encounters from my 100 days cook and see challenge that I worked on in the year 2020, which aimed at cooking with forgotten or lesser used vegetables for 100 days. The challenge started off when I realized that a number of vegetables mentioned in a 70-year-old cookbook were not extensively used anymore. Hence, the challenge was an attempt to trace these vegetables and the reason behind their disappearance. Now, the first encounter that I wish to highlight is the fact that a number of these vegetables mentioned in the cookbook were not indigenous. They came to us at some part in the history through many settlers and visitors that our country welcomed. But the presence of these vegetables in a 70-year-old traditional cookbook stands proof to the fact that we did not reject these vegetables out of fear of losing our identity. We rather embraced them, explored them, and adapted them to our cuisine. The way we use chayotes or tomatoes is much different from the way the world uses it. So, our identity in the past evolved through acceptance and adaptation. But with globalization, our identity evolution is slowly moving towards rejection. Let me take you through another finding from our Cook and See challenge. We discovered and cooked with almost 80 veggies in 100 days. But today, how many vegetables do you see in a wedding banquet or in a local restaurant's menu? And how diverse are they? Hardly 10, 12, or let's say 15. But it's so unfortunate how adversely our vegetable palette has shrunk. Also, another fact is that we don't see zucchini pachadi being served in a wedding banquet or broccoli sambar being served in a local restaurant's menu. When I mean, it's off the top of my head, you might hate it, but when you can use tomatoes in rasam or in a curry, why not use these vegetables to explore our cuisine as well? Why not make a broccoli sambar, a side out of sautéed lettuce? What is this obsession towards keeping these recently acquainted vegetables exclusive and exotic? It's almost as though there's an unsaid rule that these vegetables have to be used only in the Western cuisine, and it applies vice versa as well. Why keep indigenous vegetables away from foreign recipes? Why not make a pasta which has kovakai or ivy gourd or even podlangai or bottle gourd in it? Now, globalization and fast food have moved our identity evolution from acceptance and adaptation towards rejection and exclusivity. If this continues, our diversity or authenticity can become less evident. And now, if you ask me, so what? What's the big deal here? And the world is constantly changing, and we should stop stressing so much on culture and heritage. Then I have to tell you that I am not afraid of this change. I am for it as long as we are conscious about its effects. Rejecting the past for a radical future can bring about a huge burden on not just us, but on the environment as well. To elaborate, a shrinking vegetable palette means shrinking biodiversity, which puts agriculture under risk, eventually our economy, and so on and so forth. It's a vicious cycle. Our history has shaped, and in turn has been shaped by the environmental conditions. So rejecting it totally can bring up a huge load on our livelihood. So if even if identity is not your biggest concern, our ecosystem should be. Taking you back to our shrunk vegetable palette, it's taken us decades to even be aware of this radical change in our diet, which has already affected our biodiversity. How do we undo this? Is there a remedy to it? Well, of course, there is nothing radical here, but small, simple changes in our food habits can help us get back on track slowly but steadily. Now, let's start being more conscious about what we are eating. Start making meal plans to keep a track of your diet, what you're cooking with, and what you're eating. Slowly start experimenting with heirloom recipes and exotic veggies. And like, meanwhile, you can start creating demand for the vegetables that you don't casually find in your supermarkets. Once you start creating the demand, once you start looking for them, you will eventually find the sources. And the most efficient sources that you can find in urban environments are urban farmers. Find urban farmers who can grow what you want, or rather become one. So now let's go back in time and start growing the food that we want to eat, except with a contemporary twist to the way in which we grow them. Here's where we take help of technology with which we can grow anything in your backyard or in your balcony. Now, some of these changes might seem big or radical. So, in that case, start simple. Start with changes that you think are feasible right now. Slowly, you'll realize its impact and you'll start adapting and evolving. But the most important thing to keep in mind here is to be open to changes and to be conscious about its impacts. In this day and age, the words culture and heritage are being thrown around in every other conversation and trivialized. We have a rich cultural heritage, and supporting it or safeguarding it does not mean that we are conserving it. It is all about understanding what our heritage has offered to us. Now, in the case of food, the rich palette of ingredients, heirloom recipes, rich biodiversity, and much more. Being open to change, accepting and adapting to it, while being conscious about its impacts, is the need of the hour. Now, the next time you eat idli sambar, don't just relish its taste, also remember to relish the rich heritage it carries with it, along with the diversity that it brings to your plate and to your palate.